Once you see how I transformed one of the most overlooked kitchen tools, you'll be running to the store to try this yourself. I created the text I wanted and transferred it into my Cricut design space. I cut the designs into permanent vinyl. If you don't have a cutting machine, don't worry. You can always use cardstock and an X-Acto knife or even graphite paper to transfer your design. Next, I weeded the vinyl carefully. Then, I applied the vinyl to the long side of each board, then lightly colored in the stencil with a pencil to create a guide. With my wood-burning tool preheated and fitted with a pointed tip, I slowly traced over the pencil lines. I found a higher heat setting gave me the smoothest results. And just like that, I have 3 functional cutting boards that look exactly like a set of vintage books when stacked.
So I was able to find 10 of these bamboo cutting boards. We're going to use a good amount of E6000, and I'm going to use hot glue on the ends to hold my cutting board in place. I don't need 4 pieces to make every box, just this first box. And for the next piece, I'm going to do my 3 pieces, and then I will attach it to my top box. And then I will glue the last piece on to the bottom, and then we'll let it dry overnight.
When working with a resin pour like we're going to do here today, it does drip down the sides, and we want to make sure that none of the resin gets on the back so that this cutting board can sit flat. I'm going to embellish the top right around the handle with these beautiful dried pressed flowers. So using a tweezer, because they are pretty delicate, I'm just going to lay out the flowers and the leaves where I want them. Now, if left this way, the flowers could move when we're pouring the resin. So I'm going to carefully move the flowers down to the bottom of the board and just apply a little bit of Mod Podge to the wood and then place the flowers on. This is going to help stick them in place so they stay where I want them when we're pouring the resin. Now we're going to mix up some resin. This comes in a 2-part compound, and I'm going to pour equal parts of A and B and mix them slowly for about 3 minutes. Now, if you are using a cutting board that you are going to be using with food, you want to make sure that your resin compound is food safe. Otherwise, if you're going to use it just for decorative purposes, you can use any resin that's available on the market. Now, the first thing I want to do is pour a little bit of resin over the flowers. The Mod Podge is now dry and these are stuck in place. But I'm going to pour it over the flowers and then just use a gloved finger to gently push it in place. There's going to be a lot of air bubbles coming out of these flowers because they're layered, and I want to make sure that everything lays really flat. So just really gently go over each flower and leaf and make sure the resin kind of covers each one. After that initial coat, now I can go pour the rest of the resin over everything to give it a nice thick, even coat. I'm going to tilt it and make sure that it comes over all of the flowers, and then I'm going to use my gloved hand again to make sure that there's a smooth layer of resin on the edges of the cutting board as well. Once everything is covered, I'm just going to come at this with a heat gun to pop any bubbles, and then I'm going to let this sit for about an hour. I'm going to use the same technique with a set of wooden spoons. I only want the resin and flowers on one side, so I'm going to apply tape to the back side so that the resin doesn't drip down there. Then I'm going to add some flowers and leaves with Mod Podge to the front side of each utensil. Once the Mod Podge has dried, I'm going to take a little resin and just pour it over the handle of the utensil. It's helpful to have that handle up a little bit, so I've got mine on a plastic cup, and I've protected my surface underneath because you're going to get a lot of drips with this too. But just using that same process of pushing the resin into the flowers so there's not a lot of air bubbles. So these have both sat for about an hour, so the resin is not cured all the way, but it's done dripping. So now is a great time to pull the tape off the bottom of the spoons and the cutting board. This way we have a nice flat surface on the back, and I can let this sit and let the resin cure fully on both pieces. After 24 hours, this cutting board and utensil set is done. It makes a beautiful gift. You can wrap this up and give this for a housewarming gift, maybe a wedding, or just a birthday gift for somebody who loves to work in the kitchen. I hope this inspired you to grab some dried flowers and resin and embellish a kitchen set for yourself.
There are so many cool designs for paper straws now, and when I saw these, I knew just what I wanted to use them for. I want to start by painting the cutting board with this gorgeous shade of moss green paint. To give the board a little charm and age, I'm not going to cover the entire thing. Now that the board is ready, I can start adding these cool paper straws I found the other day. I want to use enough straws to cover most of the bottom half of the board, but I don't want them going right to the edges. The straws are really easy to cut, so I'm going to cut the ends off, leaving each one a different length. Now that I have them arranged how I like, it's time to attach them to the board. I'm going to start by attaching the outer 2 straws with some hot glue. I can use one of the straws I didn't cut as a guide to make sure they're all lined up at the bottom. With everything arranged, I can now move several straws at a time and put down a line of hot glue. I don't need much to hold them in place. The straws won't move now that they're all glued down, but I'd still like to attach some pretty cotton ribbon around them. I'm going to add just a little hot glue under the ribbon on the back just to keep them in place. I also want to attach a little piece of the ribbon through the hole at the top of the cutting board. With the board and straws ready, it's time to pop in some flower stems. These reminded me of Lily of the Valley, and I absolutely love that, so the colors go perfectly with the board. I'll finish putting the flower stems in, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I love how pretty this piece turned out, and I still can't believe that it's made from just a cutting board and some paper straws. I hope this has inspired you to grab some at the dollar store next time you're there as well.
This weekend project starts with the stool that I have in the kitchen. I'm also going to get out an old cutting board. I need to cut this stool down. It's a little too tall. It's standing at 29 inches. I need to cut it down to 26 inches or less. What I need to do is take a 2x4. These are 3.5 inches tall. I'm going to use this against the table, which is going to give me a level mark against the bottom of the stool legs. Using a pencil, I'm making a mark on the 2 sides, and then I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing again, making those 2 marks. I'm going to end up flipping the table around a couple of times and getting these flat marks right here. I'm going to use an oscillator instead of a hacksaw or anything like that. This type of tool is great. You go at your own speed and it makes a nice cut without any splinters. I'm going to cut all 4 legs off. When I'm done, I'm going to flip it over because I'm going to get a little bit of sanding done on it. I'm using 220 grit sandpaper. I just need to get that smooth finish off because I want the primer that I'm going to use next to stick and adhere really nice. When it comes time for primer, I know a lot of people think it comes in a white color, but you can also get gray, which is my preference. Prime all around, make sure it looks nice and good, but I don't want it to go on too thick because then it's going to run. Once you get the primer on it, let it dry for about 24 hours, and then I'm going to paint it. This, I'm using spray paint again, and it's a black color. That's the decor I want to go with. Once I get this done, I noticed that my stool on 2 sides is too wide. So I'm going to go about an inch, inch and a half in, make some marks. I'm going to use my jigsaw, and I'm going to cut off this one side. It is a thick piece of wood, so it takes a little bit, and I also want to do it to the same on the other side. It's time for some wood glue. I can squirt it all the way around if I want, but I want to just put this on a nice little line. I want to make sure that I stay at least an inch from the edges because when I put that bamboo on, I don't want it to fall out over the sides. I don't need a nail or a screw because I don't want any penetrations on the top. I will use some clamps, put that down. After about 2 hours, once it's dry, I can take those clamps off. And watch this, it's going to be super strong. I can pick this whole thing up. Here it is. I love this new side table. Didn't have to throw anything away, and I was able to refurbish. I hope this inspired you to upcycle any furniture you got.